It's been 2 years since the tragedy at Mother Emanuel AME Church. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with the church's historian, Liz Alston. Liz, it is so good to see you again.
It's always good to see you, Quintin.
I appreciate this.
Yes, it has been a little while since we have chatted.
And you know, since that time, I know we were supposed to do an interview last week Saturday, but you had to man the exhibit over on Calhoun Street for the Mother Emanuel exhibit. Talk to me about that exhibit and tell me where you are emotionally when you think of that.
I've been with it for over 700 days. Every couple of days I get information and memorabilia from people. And even though we have hundreds or thousands of items, the public, I think, is seemingly to understand that we can only display a certain amount. And in addition to that, probably I would drag in half of them, but we hired Rockington and Associates, which is an exhibition firm, and they select items and they know how to exhibit items. So the ones that they chose, even though I go with them and let the experts or the professionals make the decision, I have been able to not get too emotionally involved with the exhibit, because they're artifacts.
Right.
You know, they are pictures, they are paintings, they are artifacts, they are books, they are poems, they are letters, they're stuffed animals. And so, which means that as a professional, I'm able to look at them for what they stand for without breaking down or tearing apart. So an exhibit is an exhibit is an exhibit.
You talk about selection. Let me go back to last Saturday because, as you know, the 9/11 memorial folks decided to pick up on the Mother Emanuel exhibit as far as a permanent Mother Emanuel memorial. What was that like for you to actually hear that news?
Well, it's not becoming old hat because so many people are not enchanted but care about Mother Emanuel. There's a memorial at the airport. There's one being developed at the church.
Right.
There are hundreds of people who still come to the church on a daily basis. I pass the church maybe 3 or 4 times a day, and there are always people outside taking pictures.
Right.
So the mere fact, I think that when you have multiple murders in a church, 2 years is just a very small time or short time to probably internalize what is happening. I think that maybe 200, 300 years from now, they'll be talking about it. We won't be here to hear what our posterity will say about it. But it is emotional, and especially during the commemorative, I serve on the Emanuel commemorative events, and there are so many events that have gone on for the 9 days. So having gone through it or spending the whole year planning for it, I think that I am emotionally prepared for displays, prepared for actions, prepared for the public's comments, doing interviews with various people about it, chairing things like the senior luncheon,
Right.
and certainly the exhibit. So those were my main 2 functions for the commemorative events.
You talk about the senior luncheon. I know you attended that. What was that like in your mind?
Well, I chaired the senior luncheon. It was what it was is that Emanuel has a senior citizens Wednesday group. And last year we had a luncheon to honor them. And since Susie Jackson and Ethel Lance were members of the group, each year, this was the 2nd annual luncheons that they had the memory. So it was a memorial luncheon for them. the senior citizens of Emanuel, about 30 of them, came together to honor Susie and Ethel. And we had their children. I think that Susie's daughter-in-law spoke about the reflections of Susie Jackson, and Ethel Lance's daughter Esther spoke about it. The mayor was there to bring greetings. Jennifer Pinckney, who was the slain, the widow of Senator Pinckney, she spoke very eloquently about how she felt, how the girls are doing, her faith, and then she talked about gray hair, and she made gray hair sound so nice, about the ladies, and which means that we had the presence of mind to have the bus from Emanuel shuttle the seniors to the Francis Marion.
Oh, good.
And which means that I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank the city of Charleston, the Francis Marion, Dudley Gregory, who was one of our church members, and we all serve as officers of the church. But he did a lot in bringing together resources from the city and all of these agencies. Steve Dock at the Francis Marion, many of those persons helped sponsor these events. And so if you ask me how I felt about it, I feel that the camaraderie, the outpouring of love and gifts to Mother Emanuel has been enormous. And as a member and officer of the church, I certainly would like to take this opportunity to thank all of those agencies and sponsors as they commemorate the lives of the slain 9.
You are a lifelong community activist in this particular neighborhood, and I know that you have kept up with a lot. I really would need to get your take on a couple of things.
Okay.
As you know, at Charleston City Council on Tuesday, the Charleston City Council voted 7-5 not to hire an outside firm after James Lewis, a city council member, proposed to bring one from Madison, Wisconsin, to look at the practices of the Charleston City Police Department. Obviously, Novak, the consulting firm, has already been hired by the city and will actually do an audit at some point. When you look really at the definition of the outside audit, what do you say about that?
Well, I'm saying as a member of the Charleston community who follows these with Novak, and I resent the fact that Novak doesn't have any minority people on their payroll. So with the number, every day you pick up the paper, there are shootings and killings by policemen, people are being freed, and Charleston is supposed to set an example. We're supposed to be the #1 city in the nation. How in the world can you hire a firm to audit the police department without the presence of minority contributions? And the mere fact that they voted it down, I think that those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. So if you have this firm devoid of minority contributions recommending an audit of the department, and if something goes wrong, it falls on the head of those people who voted for this non-presence of minority people on the committee. I think it's grievous to be fact. I think it's a mistake, and I feel that we should take a close look at those persons who voted to hire a firm minus the contributions of the citizens who comprise this #1 historic city.
And as you know, it all started because the Charleston Area Justice Ministry basically wants an outside firm to look at, to really audit the police department. What is your definition of the Charleston Area Justice Ministry when you think of what they're trying to do?
Well, I read very carefully and I look at the composition of it, and I think you need a watchdog. I mean, I don't have to agree with everything that's being said, but so far on this issue, I'm with them and hope that they will keep up the pressure. And I think that even though the vote went down, sometimes votes can be considered. As a politician myself, I know that, laws, not that laws are supposed to be broken, but laws can be amended.
Okay.
They can rewrite the laws, they can vote them, and I feel that the majority should rule, and I think that the citizens of this great city should voice their opposition through legal means, writing letters, calling their representatives, and let them know how dissatisfied they are with the process. And that's the best way. I believe in majority rule. I believe in following the laws, but I also think that they should be fair.
Let me take you to 75 Calhoun, a place you have known for a long time. What is your take on what's going on at the Charleston County School District?
Well, as a former educator, member or chairman of the Charleston County School Board, I get calls, but I try hard not to be a Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
And from what I can understand, Superintendent Postlethwaite wanted to shift some of the principals from the high achieving schools to the low achieving schools, and which means that a lot of people like that idea. I guess it depends on what side that you're on. If you are a principal of a high achieving school, then if you move to a low achieving school, you have all the built-in indicators of success. Parents are involved, students come from families in the Mount Pleasant area. Right. And so when you get to schools like Sanders Clyde, whereby parent participation depends on whom you're talking to, the students come from low socioeconomic status, so which means it's harder to deal with those students who have been low achieving. So sometimes it's on both sides. But I can speak from experience.
Right.
I have been a high school principal.
Right.
And I voted against those choice schools and those magnet schools because what happened is that they drain off the high achieving students and leave me with the low achieving students. And of course, it's all not on the square on the pot. So sometimes it's a double-edged sword. So which means that if we believe that all students can learn given the same amount of resources, then the students can learn. And I do know that in schools like Mount Pleasant, and I'll stand on top of the Empire State Building and say, those schools get the resources, and those other low achieving schools don't get the resources. And now white principals are able to bring those resources to the table, and those may be some of the reasons. So that if we believe in equal justice for all and sparing the part, I'd like to see some of those high achieving principals in their schools go into some of these low achieving schools, and at least let's try it and see what's happened. And then if the resources are poured into these schools, and have been Marva Collins in New York and all of these other areas, whereby when you find that the resources are up and in equal justice and equal representation, right, then it would happen. So I say, yes, shake it up a little bit and let's see what happens.
One more question. When you look at the Charleston County School Board from when you were there to now, what is the biggest difference to you?
Well, sometimes you find a lot of people run for school, not only in Charleston, to keep the taxes down.
Okay.
And so you find out that there are a lot of persons who run for the school board because it's a high-profile situation, and a lot of people like the attention that they're getting. So, I don't know. Then looking at when they call me, I just run the other way for those areas. So you find that in reading the areas, and I know of many of the school board members, but I would stop short to say and speak for myself. As a school board member, I ran to make a difference. I made myself aware of knowledge is power, which means I knew where the bodies were buried. Having been a teacher, I've had 11 jobs with the Charleston County School District, and then I am committed. I'm not saying that they aren't. I stayed up all night. I did not accept any gratuities for many of those areas. So that's what I consider a good board member, and I haven't been assessing the qualities of all of them. Some of them I wouldn't invite across the street, but that's another story.
The Honorable Liz Alston. thank you for this interview. I appreciate it. Thank you.